I am Stacy, 31 years old, and until recently, married to Jason for 5 years. My mother-in-law Vivian never thought I was good enough for her precious son. Tonight at Le Ciel, an upscale restaurant, Vivian presented me with divorce papers as my birthday gift. Everyone watched as Jason recorded my reaction, their smiles anticipating my breakdown. Instead, I signed, immediately thanked her, and walked out with my head high. They had no idea what I had already set in motion. If you are watching this and have ever dealt with toxic in-laws, drop a comment below. Like and subscribe to hear how I turned the tables in ways they never saw coming. I grew up in a loving, middle-class home in suburban Minnesota. My parents worked hard to provide for me and my younger sister. Dad was a high school math teacher, and Mom managed a small local bookstore. They taught us the value of education, hard work, and integrity. Unlike some of my friends who had their college fully funded by their parents, I worked part-time jobs throughout my undergraduate years while maintaining a scholarship. After graduating with a marketing degree, I landed an entry-level position at a respected firm in Chicago. That was where my career took off. Within 3 years, I had earned 2 promotions through dedication and innovative campaign ideas. My life felt on track professionally, but my personal life consisted mainly of brief relationships that fizzled out due to my work schedule. Until Jason. We met at my college roommate Olivia's wedding. Jason was the best man cousin to the groom. He caught my eye immediately, with his confident smile and warm brown eyes. During the reception, he approached me at the bar and struck up a conversation. The chemistry was instant and intense. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my work and ambitions. "A beautiful woman with brains and drive," he had said, raising his glass to toast me. "That is a rare combination." Jason came from old money. His family owned Lambert Industries, a manufacturing company started by his grandfather that had expanded significantly under his father Thomas's leadership. Jason worked as the vice president of business development, a position that afforded him a luxurious lifestyle. He had an MBA from Wharton and the polish of someone who grew up with privilege but without the arrogance I often associated with wealth. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Weekend getaways to wine, country surprise deliveries of flowers to my office, and long conversations about our dreams for the future. Within 6 months, he proposed during a private dinner cruise on Lake Michigan. I said yes, without hesitation, believing I had found my partner in life. The first warning sign appeared when I met his mother, Vivian Lambert. She was impeccably dressed in designer clothes, her blonde hair styled perfectly, not a strand out of place. Her smile never reached her eyes as she assessed me. "So you work in advertising, is it?" she asked, making my career sound like a hobby. "Marketing, actually," I corrected gently. "I am a senior brand manager for Apex Strategies." "How quaint," she replied with a tight smile. I always told Jason he should marry someone who could focus on creating a proper home. Careers can be so distracting for a young wife. Jason squeezed my hand under the table, but said nothing to contradict his mother. I ignored the knot forming in my stomach, telling myself she just needed time to know me better. Wedding planning became a battleground. Vivian had opinions about everything from the venue to the napkin colors. When I selected a sleek modern gown, she brought me catalog clippings of traditional ball gowns more suitable for a Lambert bride. When I suggested incorporating some of my family's Polish traditions into the ceremony, she dismissed them as quaint but unnecessary. Jason played peacemaker, often siding with his mother to keep the peace, while promising me privately that things would improve after the wedding. His father Thomas remained largely silent, deferring to Vivian in all social matters while he focused on the business. My mother means well, Jason would say, after particularly tense planning sessions. She just wants everything to be perfect. Once we are married, she will step back. I promise. Despite the tensions, I held on to hope. I loved Jason and believed in our future together. The wedding was beautiful, if overly extravagant for my taste. Vivian got her way on most details, but I focused on what mattered. Jason and I were starting our life together. The first 2 years of marriage had their ups and downs. We purchased a beautiful brownstone in Lincoln Park, which I worked hard to turn into our home. Jason traveled frequently for business, but when he was home, we enjoyed exploring Chicago's restaurants, attending theater performances, and hosting small dinner parties for friends. Vivian visited often, usually unannounced. She would inspect our home, running her finger along surfaces, checking for dust, rearranging my carefully selected decorative items, and making subtle comments about my housekeeping or cooking. Jason grew up with professionally prepared meals, she would remind me. He is used to a certain standard. I made countless efforts to win her approval. I researched and prepared elaborate meals when she visited. I joined the charity committee she chaired at the Chicago Arts Foundation. I even took etiquette refresher courses, hoping to eliminate any reason for criticism. Jason promised repeatedly to establish boundaries with his mother. I will talk to her, he would say, after each incident, but the conversation never seemed to happen, or if it did, nothing changed. Still, I remained hopeful. I believed that with time and consistent effort, Vivian would accept me as part of the family. I thought that once we had children, things would naturally improve. I imagined Vivian as a doting grandmother, her ice melting in the presence of her grandchildren. I was wrong. So very wrong. The real turning point came when Jason received a significant promotion 3 years into our marriage. As the new Chief Strategy Officer for Lambert Industries, his responsibilities expanded to include international partnerships, requiring him to travel even more frequently. Sometimes he would be gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, leaving me alone in our large home. Or rather, not alone. Vivian took his absences as an invitation to increase her presence in our lives. She began stopping by unannounced several times a week, often letting herself in with the key Jason had given her for emergencies. I would return from work to find her in our kitchen, inspecting the contents of our refrigerator, or reorganizing our pantry. "Stacy, darling," she said one evening, when I came home to find her arranging flowers in our living room, I noticed your throw pillows were looking rather tired, so I took the liberty of ordering new ones. The blue you chose simply did not complement the wall color. The new pillows in a shade of cream I found impractical had already replaced mine. My carefully selected blue pillows were nowhere to be seen. When I asked about them, Vivian waved dismissively. I donated them to the charity shop. They really were not up to standard. These intrusions extended beyond decor. Vivian began commenting on my appearance, suggesting my wardrobe was too career-focused and not feminine enough. She questioned why I continued working such long hours when Jason can more than provide for both of you. The implication being that my career was unnecessary and perhaps even selfish. The worst incidents involved food. Vivian had opinions about everything I cooked, finding fault with even my most successful dishes. When I prepared beef Wellington for a dinner with Jason's colleagues, spending hours to get it perfect, Vivian took one bite and said, "It is a bit overdone, dear, and the pastry is soggy. Perhaps you should have practiced first." As the evening progressed, she regaled the table with stories of Jason's childhood, pointedly mentioning how his previous girlfriend, Nicole, had been such an accomplished cook. "She studied in Paris, you know," Vivian added, looking directly at me. Later that night, I confronted Jason about his mother's behavior. "She humiliated me in front of your colleagues," I said, fighting back tears. And why does she still have a key to our house? We need boundaries, Jason. He sighed, loosening his tie. You are overreacting again, Stacy. Mother was just trying to help with dinner. She has high standards, that is all. And of course, she has a key. She is family. But what she said about Nicole, that was just conversation, he interrupted. You are being too sensitive. Mother loves you in her own way. This pattern repeated itself with increasing frequency. When I decorated the guest room, Vivian redesigned it during one of Jason's trips. When I mentioned we were considering starting a family, Vivian questioned whether I was mature enough for motherhood and suggested we wait until Jason's career stabilized, which made no sense given his success. The isolation grew when Vivian began hosting family dinners, to which Jason was always invited, but the invitation to me would come as an afterthought or not at all. At one holiday gathering, I overheard Vivian talking to her sister. Of course she is not what we had hoped for, Vivian was saying. But he seems attached for now. I am sure he will come to his senses eventually. The prenuptial agreement will protect the family assets, thank goodness. I had known about the prenuptial agreement, of course. I had signed it willingly, not wanting Jason's money. But hearing Vivian discuss it so coldly made me realize she had never seen our marriage as permanent. Things worsened when I discovered Vivian had been reviewing our financial records. Jason and I maintained joint accounts, and one day, while using his laptop, I found spreadsheets detailing our spending with certain items, highlighted primarily purchases I had made. Even reasonable ones, like a new winter coat or business attire for work. When I confronted Jason, his response chilled me. Mother is just helping me keep track of our finances. She has always been good with money management. But these are our private finances, Jason. Our marriage, she has no right. Do not be dramatic, Stacy. She is looking out for our best interests. In that moment, I realized the extent of the problem. Jason would never prioritize our marriage over his mother's influence. The boundaries I had hoped for would never materialize. The man I thought would be my partner was in reality still very much his mother's son. That night alone in bed, while Jason slept in the guest room, claiming he needed space from my negativity, I felt the first real crack in my heart. The hope I had been nurturing that things would improve began to wither. I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake, tying myself to a family that would never truly accept me. But even then, I was not ready to give up. I still loved Jason. I still believed we could work through our problems, if only he would see how his mother's behavior was affecting our marriage. I did not yet understand that the problem went far deeper than Vivian's interference. I did not yet see that Jason himself was the true disappointment. The situation deteriorated further when I discovered that Vivian had been systematically poisoning my reputation among our social circle. At a charity gala, I overheard Diane, who I had considered a friend, telling another woman that she had heard I was emotionally unstable and struggling with the demands of being a Lambert. The source of this information was unmistakably Vivian. Confronting Diane directly led to an uncomfortable confession. Vivian had been hosting ladies' lunches where she would express concerns about my mental health and suggest that friends keep a watchful eye on me. She had effectively isolated me from the social connections I had been building since moving to Chicago. Meanwhile, Jason began spending more time with his family without me. Sunday brunches, golf outings, and even weekend trips to their lake house in Michigan became regular occurrences. When I asked to join, there was always a reason why it would be better if I stayed home. It is just business talk, Stacy. You would be bored or Mother is in one of her moods. Let me handle her alone this time. Our 5th wedding anniversary should have been a celebration. I had planned a surprise weekend in New York with tickets to a Broadway show Jason had mentioned wanting to see. 2 days before we were set to leave, Jason canceled. Mother is having some sort of crisis with the foundation gala, he explained, not meeting my eyes. She needs my help with the donors. We will celebrate when I get back, I promise. I spent our anniversary alone, watching the Broadway show, by myself, an empty seat beside me that I had paid hundreds of dollars for. Jason sent flowers to our hotel room with a card that read, "Sorry, we'll make it up to you." The card was signed in Vivian's handwriting. He had not even bothered to arrange the gesture himself. When he returned, there was no mention of making up for the missed anniversary. Instead, he brought up a new concern. "Mother thinks you might benefit from speaking with someone," he said carefully over dinner. "A therapist. She knows someone very discreet who specializes in adjustment issues." "Adjustment issues," I repeated, putting down my fork. "You know, adapting to the Lambert lifestyle. Mother thinks you seem unhappy." The suggestion that I needed therapy because I was not adapting properly to Vivian's constant interference was the final insult. "The only thing making me unhappy is your mother's constant meddling and your refusal to stand up to her," I said quietly. Jason's face hardened. "This is exactly what Mother means. You always blame her for everything. Maybe if you tried harder to fit in instead of fighting her at every turn." Later that week, I came home early from work with a migraine to find Jason and Vivian in our living room speaking in hushed tones. I paused in the hallway out of sight. "She is becoming more difficult," Vivian was saying. "I worry about her stability, Jason. Remember how she yelled at the housekeeper last month?" I had never yelled at our housekeeper. In fact, I had given her a bonus after she worked late to help prepare for a dinner party. "I know, Mother," Jason replied. "I am keeping an eye on the situation. The prenup is solid if it comes to that." "It might have to," Vivian sighed. "I never wanted to say this, but I have always felt she married you for the Lambert name and fortune. Her background is just so common." That night, I went through our financial documents and discovered something disturbing. Jason had been gradually restricting my access to our joint funds. Large transfers had been made to accounts in his name only. When I checked our investment portfolio, I found that my name had been removed as a beneficiary on several accounts. My career had been thriving despite the personal turmoil. I had been promoted to marketing director overseeing campaigns for major national brands. My salary had increased significantly, something that seemed to make both Jason and Vivian uncomfortable. "Do you really need to work such long hours now?" Jason asked after my promotion. "We have more than enough money." "I work because I love my job," I replied. "My career is important to me." Vivian was more direct during one of her uninvited visits. "A wife's ambition can be so unattractive to a husband," she remarked. "Men need to feel like providers. Your success might be emasculating poor Jason." I later discovered that Vivian had been planting seeds of doubt about my intentions. "She is advancing so quickly," she told Jason. "Perhaps she is using the Lambert name to climb the corporate ladder. Or worse, perhaps she is preparing for independence, building her own wealth in case of divorce." The irony was that I had never once considered divorce until I found the text messages. Jason had left his phone on the counter while showering, and a notification popped up from someone named Nicole B., the same Nicole who had studied cooking in Paris. Against my better judgment, I looked. The messages were intimate and ongoing, referring to their special weekends and how Nicole could not wait to see him again. There were mentions of a future together once Jason handled his situation at home. When confronted, Jason denied everything at first, then shifted to anger. "You invaded my privacy," he shouted. "This is exactly the kind of unstable behavior Mother has been concerned about." By morning, he had packed a bag and moved to his parents' house, claiming he needed space to think about our future. He left me alone in our home, surrounded by the life we had built that now felt like an elaborate facade. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. I struggled to concentrate at work. I lost weight as my appetite disappeared. Friends tried to reach out, but I had withdrawn, ashamed, and confused about how my life had unraveled so completely. In my darkest moments, I wondered if Vivian had been right all along. Perhaps I was not good enough for the Lambert family. Perhaps I was the problem. It would take a devastating public humiliation for me to finally see the truth. After 3 weeks of separation, Jason returned home with roses and apologies. He claimed the messages with Nicole were nothing serious, and that he had ended whatever was happening between them. He promised to work on our marriage and suggested couples counseling with a therapist of his choosing. "I miss you," he said, his eyes conveying what seemed like genuine remorse. "We can fix this, Stacy. I know we can." I wanted to believe him. Despite everything, I still loved the man I thought he was or could be. I agreed to try again, setting clear expectations about boundaries with his mother and transparency moving forward. For a few weeks, things seemed better. Jason was attentive and present. Vivian's visits decreased. We attended 2 counseling sessions, though the therapist seemed strangely focused on my acceptance of family dynamics rather than addressing the actual issues in our marriage. Then came the devastating discovery that shattered any remaining illusion. I went to withdraw money for a gift for my sister's new baby and found our joint checking account empty. When I checked our savings account, it too had been drained with only $100 remaining. Our investment accounts showed massive withdrawals. Panicked, I called Jason, who was traveling for business. His response was cold and prepared, as if he had been expecting my call. "I have moved our assets temporarily," he said, without emotion. "Mother suggested it would be prudent given your emotional state. We will discuss restructuring our finances when I return." "You emptied our accounts without telling me. That is financial abuse, Jason." "Do not be dramatic," he replied. "The money is safe. Mother and I are just protecting what is rightfully ours until you demonstrate more stability." The word ours hung in the air. Not ours meaning Jason and me, but Jason and Vivian. In that moment, I finally understood that I had never been a true partner in my marriage. I had always been an outsider, tolerated, but never accepted. That night, I contacted a lawyer friend for a recommendation and secretly met with Patricia Goldman, one of the top divorce attorneys in Chicago. She listened to my story with growing concern. "What you are describing is financial abuse and gaslighting," she said bluntly. "And unfortunately, it is quite common in wealthy families trying to protect their assets from what they perceive as outsiders." She advised me to gather whatever documentation I could without alerting Jason or his family, and to prepare for a difficult battle. "The Lamberts have resources and connections," she warned. "They will not make this easy." Over the next few weeks, I discovered that Jason had been monitoring my emails and tracking my location through my phone. Hidden cameras had been installed in our home office and bedroom, disguised as clock radios. When I found them, I left them in place now, aware that I was being watched. I began planning my exit strategy carefully and secretly. I opened a new email account on a library computer. I purchased a prepaid phone. I copied whatever financial records I could access and stored them in a secure cloud account. Then came my 31st birthday. Jason suggested we celebrate with dinner at Le Ciel, the most exclusive restaurant in Chicago. Oddly, he insisted that his parents join us along with his brother Ryan and sister-in-law Catherine. I was suspicious but agreed, not wanting to show my hand. The restaurant was everything its reputation promised. Crystal chandeliers, white linen tablecloths, waitstaff moving silently between tables. We were seated at a prominent table in the center of the main dining room. Vivian arrived, wearing diamonds that could have paid off a mortgage, while Thomas looked uncomfortable in his tailored suit. The first part of the evening progressed with superficial pleasantries. Expensive wine flowed freely. Jason seemed nervous, checking his phone frequently and exchanging glances with his mother. When the dessert course arrived, a waiter brought out a small cake with a single candle singing an uncomfortable rendition of Happy Birthday. As I prepared to blow out the candle, Vivian cleared her throat. "Before we continue the celebration, we have a special gift for Stacy," she announced, her voice carrying across the restaurant, heads turned at nearby tables. From her designer handbag, she withdrew a thick envelope and slid it across the table to me. "From all of us," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "We thought it was time." I opened the envelope slowly, already suspecting what I might find. Inside was a set of divorce papers already signed by Jason. The terms were brutal: no alimony, no claim to any Lambert assets, and a gag order preventing me from discussing the family publicly. I looked up to see Jason holding his phone, recording my reaction. Ryan and Catherine were watching with barely concealed smirks. Thomas looked at his plate, unwilling to meet my eyes. Several patrons at nearby tables were openly staring, now witnessing my humiliation. "We felt a public setting would encourage civility," Vivian explained smoothly. "The Lamberts have a reputation to maintain, after all." The restaurant seemed to go silent as everyone waited for my response. I could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on me, anticipating tears, a scene, something to gossip about later. Instead, I took a pen from my purse, signed the papers with a steady hand, and slid them back to Vivian. "Thank you for making this easy," I said calmly. "I have wanted out of this toxic family for longer than you know." I placed my napkin on the table, and added, "Jason, I hope Nicole enjoys being the next project for your mother. Vivian, you have succeeded in breaking up our marriage. Congratulations. The victory is yours." With that, I walked out of Le Ciel, with my head held high, feeling the stares of the other diners burning into my back. It was only when I reached the safety of a taxi that I allowed myself to smile. They had no idea what I had already set in motion. No idea at all. My preparation had begun 3 months earlier when I discovered a discrepancy in some financial documents Jason had carelessly left open on his laptop. The numbers did not add up, suggesting funds were being moved through channels that seemed designed to obscure their origins and destinations. Initially, I thought Jason might be hiding money from me in preparation for a divorce. But as I discreetly investigated further, I began to suspect something more serious. The transactions involved the Lambert Foundation, the family's charitable organization, and several offshore accounts. I needed professional help. Through a trusted colleague whose brother worked in financial investigation, I was introduced to Frank Donovan, a private investigator specializing in white-collar crime. I paid his retainer from a personal savings account I had maintained since before my marriage, one Jason knew nothing about. Rich families often think they are untouchable. Frank told me during our first meeting in a coffee shop far from my usual haunts. They get sloppy, assuming their money and connections will protect them. Frank's investigation revealed disturbing patterns. The Lambert Foundation was being used to funnel money through fake charitable projects. Taxes were being evaded on a massive scale. Corporate funds were being diverted to personal accounts. And Jason was deeply involved, his signature appearing on numerous questionable documents. But the investigation uncovered something else, unexpected evidence of Jason's infidelities, not just with Nicole, but with 3 other women over the past 2 years. Frank provided photographs, hotel receipts, and credit card statements showing gifts purchased for these women using company accounts disguised as business expenses. "Your husband has been quite busy," Frank observed dryly, as he showed me the evidence. and quite careless. I felt oddly calm, reviewing the proof of Jason's betrayal. Perhaps I had already emotionally detached from the marriage more than I realized. Or perhaps the financial crimes seemed so much more serious that the affairs paled in comparison. With Frank's evidence in hand, I sought out Patricia Goldman again. She reviewed the documents with growing interest. "This changes everything," she said, tapping the folder containing evidence of tax fraud, leverage. "Exactly what we need." Patricia explained that while the prenuptial agreement was indeed solid evidence of criminal activity, created new possibilities, the courts take a dim view of assets acquired through illegal means, she noted. And the IRS is always interested in tax evasion, especially on this scale. Under Patricia's guidance, I began meticulously documenting everything. I created secure digital backups of all evidence. I recorded conversations when legal to do so. I kept a detailed journal of incidents of emotional abuse and financial control. I also began securing my financial independence. My boss, Linda, had been concerned about my declining performance at work and the visible stress I was under. When I finally confided in her about my situation, she became an unexpected ally. "My first husband pulled similar stunts," she revealed. "I will not let another woman go through what I did without support." Linda arranged for my year-end bonus to be deferred and paid into a new account at a different bank. She connected me with her personal financial advisor, who helped me establish credit in my name alone. She even offered me a temporary place to stay when the time came to leave. I built a support network outside of the social circle the Lamberts controlled. I reconnected with old college friends. I joined a support group for women in difficult marriages using only my first name. I started therapy with a counselor of my own choosing, one not connected to the Lamberts in any way. Each step was taken with extreme caution. I maintained the appearance of trying to save my marriage. I continued to attend Lambert family functions, smiling through Vivian's barbed comments. I performed the role of dutiful wife while secretly preparing for my exit. By the time Jason and Vivian orchestrated their public divorce paper delivery, I had already filed confidential reports with the IRS whistleblower office regarding the tax fraud, secured copies of all relevant financial documents showing Jason's involvement, established financial independence with new accounts, credit cards, and a small apartment rented under a friend's name, built a case for a more equitable divorce settlement despite the prenuptial agreement, documented the pattern of emotional abuse and financial control. What the Lamberts failed to understand was that I had never wanted their money. I had wanted a genuine partnership with Jason, a relationship based on love and respect. When that proved impossible, I sought only what was fair and the accountability they had evaded for so long. As I left Lucille that night, walking away from the public humiliation they had orchestrated, I was not retreating in defeat. I was advancing to the next phase of my carefully constructed plan. The real surprise was yet to come. The morning after the restaurant incident, I moved into the apartment I had secretly rented. I changed my phone number, keeping the old one active, only to monitor the increasingly frantic messages from Jason. They evolved from anger. "How dare you embarrass us publicly?" to threats. "You will get nothing," to false concern. "We are worried about your mental state," to eventual pleading. "Please call me. We need to talk too." I instructed Patricia to handle all communication with Jason's lawyers. Meanwhile, the mechanisms I had set in motion began to work. 3 days after I signed the divorce papers, the IRS launched an official investigation into Lambert Industries and the Lambert Foundation based on the evidence I had provided. Jason's first inkling that something was seriously wrong came when federal agents arrived at Lambert Industries headquarters with subpoenas for financial records. Company executives were questioned. Accounts were frozen, pending investigation. The family's banking activities came under scrutiny. 7 days after the restaurant, Vivian called my old number, leaving a voicemail that veered between fury and panic. "Whatever you think you are doing needs to stop immediately," she hissed. "You signed the divorce agreement. You have no right to cause trouble for this family. If you continue, we will destroy you." I saved the voicemail as further evidence of intimidation. Through Patricia, I arranged a meeting with the entire Lambert family and their legal team at their attorney's office. I arrived with Patricia and Frank, plus a forensic accountant who had reviewed all the evidence. The Lamberts expected to intimidate me into dropping whatever claims I might make. Instead, they walked into a carefully laid trap. Before we begin discussing divorce terms, Patricia opened my client would like to address some concerns about potentially criminal financial activities she has discovered. The color drained from Thomas Lambert's face as our forensic accountant methodically presented evidence of tax fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement spanning 8 years. Jason repeatedly tried to interrupt, but his own lawyer silenced him with a hand on his arm. "The IRS investigation is already underway," Patricia continued calmly. "The SEC has also been notified about certain securities violations. However, my client is primarily concerned with achieving a fair divorce settlement, not criminal prosecution. This is blackmail." Vivian spat, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "This is negotiation," Patricia corrected. "Mrs. Lambert wishes to modify the terms of the prenuptial agreement in light of these extraordinary circumstances." What followed was 6 hours of tense negotiation. The Lamberts' lawyers conferred privately with the family multiple times. Voices were raised, threats were made. But ultimately, faced with the mountain of evidence and the reality of the ongoing federal investigation, they conceded to our terms. 1. A fair division of marital assets acquired during our 5-year marriage, regardless of whose name they were in. 2. Ownership of the intellectual property I had helped develop for Lambert Industries' marketing campaigns. 3. A non-disclosure agreement that worked both ways, preventing the Lamberts from disparaging me, just as I would not speak publicly about their legal troubles. 4. A substantial settlement reflecting my contributions to Jason's career and the growth of Lambert Industries during our marriage. By evening, new papers were drawn up and signed. The Lamberts left ashen-faced and silent. Only Jason lingered, asking to speak with me alone. Against Patricia's advice, I agreed to 5 minutes. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Is it revenge money?" "It is accountability," Jason I replied. "Something your family has avoided for too long. I never wanted your money. I wanted a husband who respected me, who chose me over his mother's manipulation. You could not be that man." "I loved you," he insisted weakly. "No, you loved the idea of me. The attractive, accomplished wife who looked good at corporate events but would ultimately bow to the Lambert way of doing things. When I failed to become that person, you chose your family's toxic dynamic over our marriage." He had no response to that. As he turned to leave, I added, "Give Nicole my congratulations. I hope she enjoys cooking for your mother." The legal process moved forward, but my revenge was not yet complete. The timing was almost poetic. Vivian's 60th birthday was approaching, an event she had been planning for months. A lavish celebration at the Peninsula Hotel's rooftop ballroom with 200 of Chicago's elite in attendance. Business partners, social connections, charity board members, all the people the Lamberts needed to maintain their facade of respectability. Through a former colleague now working for the event planning company, handling the party, I learned every detail of the celebration. I knew the guest list, the schedule, the seating arrangement. I knew Vivian had ordered a custom gown from Paris. I knew Thomas would be unveiling a diamond necklace worth 6 figures as her gift. The night of the party, I arrived at the peninsula, dressed elegantly but discreetly. I had not been removed from the guest list either through oversight or because the Lamberts feared drawing attention to my absence. I timed my entrance for maximum effect, walking in during Vivian's self-congratulatory speech about the Lambert legacy and commitment to community. She faltered mid-sentence when she saw me, her champagne glass freezing halfway to her lips. Thomas followed her gaze and nearly dropped his own drink. Jason, standing near his parents, went pale. I moved through the crowd, greeting people I knew with warm smiles. Many seemed confused by the palpable tension looking between me and the Lambert family with curiosity. I approached Harold Bennett, the chairman of Chicago First Bank and a key Lambert Industries investor who had always been kind to me. "Harold, how lovely to see you," I said, embracing him warmly. "I have been meaning to call you. There are some financial matters regarding Lambert Industries I thought you should be aware of before the story breaks in the Journal next week." Similar conversations with 5 other key business associates followed. I was careful never to make specific allegations publicly, only to suggest they might want to distance themselves from certain Lambert ventures, given what is coming. The beauty of the approach was its subtlety. I violated no confidentiality agreements while still managing to create significant concern among the Lamberts' most important connections. As whispers spread through the party, I noticed several guests discreetly checking their phones, perhaps Googling Lambert Industries, and finding the first small news items about an ongoing investigation into financial irregularities. The crescendo came when I approached Nicole, who was indeed Jason's date for the evening. She looked uncomfortable in a dress, too young for her, clearly trying to meet Vivian's expectations. "Nicole, we were never properly introduced," I said, extending my hand. "I am Stacy, Jason's wife, well soon to be ex-wife. Has he mentioned he is still legally married? Or that he has been seeing 3 other women besides you? The federal investigation has uncovered some interesting credit card charges at hotels across the country." Nicole's expression shifted from confusion to shock to anger in seconds. She looked at Jason, who was hurrying toward us, then back at me. Without a word, she turned and walked directly to the elevator, ignoring Jason's calls to wait. By this point, Vivian had abandoned her speech and was attempting to salvage the evening, moving frantically between important guests with fixed smiles and urgent whispers. Thomas had disappeared completely, perhaps making emergency calls to lawyers. I made my way to the center of the room, where the elaborate birthday cake waited to be presented. I tapped a spoon against a champagne flute, gaining everyone's attention. "I would like to propose a toast to Vivian Lambert." I announced, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet ballroom. "A woman who taught me the true meaning of family, who showed me exactly what kind of marriage I did not want, who gifted me divorce papers on my birthday in a public restaurant with her son, recording my humiliation for their entertainment." Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Vivian stood frozen, her face contorted with rage and mortification. "I signed those papers immediately and walked out, Prazen," I continued, "because I had already discovered the truth about the Lambert family, about their business practices, about Jason's multiple affairs, about the web of deception they had woven for years." I raised my glass higher. "So thank you, Vivian, for freeing me from your toxic family. The federal investigators send their regards. Happy birthday." With that, I placed my untouched champagne on a nearby table and walked calmly to the exit. Behind me, Chaos erupted. Guests began making excuses to leave. Vivian collapsed into a chair, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Jason stood abandoned in the center of the room, his girlfriend gone, his family's reputation in tatters. Within days, the full story broke in the financial press. Lambert Industries' stock plummeted. Several board members resigned. The charity foundation was placed under external administration. Former friends and associates publicly distanced themselves from the family. Jason attempted to contact me several times, alternating between rage and pleas for reconciliation. We could start over, his final message suggested. Leave Chicago, go somewhere new. I choose you now, Stacy. I choose you over them. Too little, too late. I deleted his message without replying. 6 months after the birthday party incident, my life had transformed completely. The divorce was finalized with terms favorable to me, providing enough capital to start my own boutique marketing firm specializing in ethical business practices. The irony was not lost on me. My first clients came through connections who had witnessed the Lambert family's fall and been impressed by my poise throughout the scandal. Linda, my former boss, joined me as a partner, bringing her expertise and client relationships to our new venture. I moved to a comfortable but modest condo in Wicker Park, far from the gilded cage of our Lincoln Park brownstone. The space was entirely mine, decorated, according to my taste, without fear of criticism or interference. No one had keys except me. No one entered without my explicit invitation. Therapy became a crucial part of my healing journey. Dr. Wilson helped me understand the patterns of emotional abuse I had endured and the subtle ways my confidence and independence had been undermined over years. She helped me recognize that standing up for myself was not revenge, but restoration of my dignity. Healing is not linear, she reminded me during a particularly difficult session when memories of happier times with Jason surfaced unexpectedly. You can miss aspects of your marriage while still knowing you made the right decision to leave. New friendships blossomed with people who valued me for myself, not my connection to a wealthy family. I reconnected with college friends I had lost touch with during my marriage. I joined a hiking group and discovered a love for outdoor adventures I had never explored before. I even began dating again, cautiously but optimistically. The Lambert family's legal troubles continued to unfold. Thomas faced criminal charges for tax evasion and securities fraud. Jason avoided prosecution by cooperating with authorities, but was removed from his position at the company. Vivian withdrew from social life entirely after several former friends publicly discussed her manipulative behavior. Jason attempted reconciliation multiple times. Flowers delivered to my office, emails expressing regret and promises of change. Even an awkward visit to my condo where he stood in the lobby until I agreed to come down for 5 minutes. I miss you, he said, looking genuinely distressed. I was wrong about everything. Mother was wrong. We should have supported your career, your independence. I see that now. Would you see it if your family had not faced legal consequences? I asked. Would you be here if their reputation was still intact? He had no answer to that. In his silence, I found my closure. Goodbye, Jason, I said gently. I hope you find happiness, but it will not be with me. 3 weeks later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had moved to San Francisco to work for a college friend's startup. A fresh start away from the shadow of the Lambert name in Chicago. I wished him well in my heart, the anger finally beginning to fade. The most unexpected encounter came 6 months after the divorce was finalized. I was shopping at a farmer's market when I literally bumped carts with Vivian Lambert. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. She looked older, tired, wearing simple slacks and a sweater, her hair showing gray roots. For a moment, we simply stared at each other. I expected anger, accusations, threats. Instead, I saw something I had never witnessed in her before: uncertainty. "Stacy," she said, finally, her voice lacking its usual imperious tone. "Vivian," I replied calmly. She seemed to struggle with what to say next. "You look well." "Thank you. I am." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Around us, people browsed produce and artisanal breads, oblivious to the charged moment. "You destroyed our family," she said, finally, but the words held more despair than venom. I shook my head. "No, Vivian. Your family was destroying itself long before I came along. The dishonesty, the manipulation, the belief that rules did not apply to you. I simply refused to be another casualty." She flinched slightly at my words. "Thomas may go to prison." "I am sorry about that," I said, and found that I genuinely meant it. But those were his choices, not mine. Vivian looked down at her half-empty shopping cart. "Jason is gone. He barely speaks to me now. Perhaps that is for the best, for both of you." She looked up sharply. "You never loved him, did you? It was all about the money, the position." Even now, she could not see the truth. "I loved Jason deeply," I corrected her. "Enough to believe we could overcome your interference. Enough to stay far longer than I should have. It was never about money, Vivian. It was about respect, partnership, and truth. Things your family never understood." Without waiting for her response, I nodded a goodbye and moved away, continuing my shopping. I felt her eyes on my back but did not turn around. That chapter of my life was closed. The journey taught me lessons I carry with me every day. I learned that love without respect is not really love at all. I learned that standing up for yourself is not selfish, but necessary. I learned that financial independence is not just about money, but about freedom to make choices. Most importantly, I learned that forgiveness does not mean allowing toxic people back into your life. I forgave Jason and the Lambert family, not for their benefit, but for my own peace. Forgiveness meant releasing the anger and bitterness that could have poisoned my future. Today, my life is authentically mine. My success is built on my own merits and hard work. My relationships are based on mutual respect and genuine affection. The pain of those 5 years has faded, leaving behind wisdom and strength I might never have discovered otherwise. If you are in a relationship where your voice is silenced, where your worth is constantly questioned, where someone else controls the narrative of your life, know this: you have the power to write a new story. Your happy ending might not look like what you once imagined, but it can be beautiful, authentic, and truly yours. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you in any way, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and transformation. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who underestimated you? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember, sharing our stories helps others find the courage to rewrite their own. Until next time, this is Stacy reminding you that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well on your own terms.